So at 3:00, I had gotten the text from the church secretary that we weren't going to be able to meet. And then an hour and a half later, I get a message from him saying he thinks we'll be able to meet at his church. That ended up being our haven during that year.
Welcome to When You Look, where ordinary people share their extraordinary experiences, and you get to decide, was it coincidence or God? Jamie, thanks so much for being on When You Look. Really delighted to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
We are as well. And we know you have a great story to share, as does every guest. But before we get into your story, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Again, my name is Jamie, and I am a homeschooling mom of 4. I've been married for 29 years to Neil. We live in Mechanicsville, Virginia. And basically, I run a homeschooling group with Classical Conversations in Mechanicsville. And I've been doing that for probably 6 or 7 years now. And I love helping families as they homeschool. And then I just love being with my family. So
awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the show. We are excited to hear your story. Before we jump to the story, give us a little bit of the backstory that leads up to the events that you're going to describe.
As I said, I lead a homeschooling co-op. Classical Conversations is the name of it. Classical Conversations we have communities all over the world. And the way that we typically meet is we meet in churches. So right before COVID, we were meeting in a local country church here in Mechanicsville. And when COVID hit, we ended up going online for those last few weeks. So I was talking with the church secretary, and she started to kind of let me know that she knew that this was going to be an issue for us to be able to meet. And then we spent the summer kind of in turmoil, wondering whether or not we were going to have a facility to meet. A lot of churches were scared and didn't know if they could open their building to people. And our group really wanted to get together. As homeschoolers, we thrive on our time together and having that sense of community. And I was very anxious and worried about what was going to happen to my little community of families. In fact, I was so worried. I had actually been to the dentist because I had developed TMJ just from like clenching my jaw and being so worried at night, just worried about what we were going to do. I think a lot of people were worried during that time, but I had a lot of families depending on me and depending on each other and depending on the community. So I felt, like I needed to be able to provide a place for us to meet. And I didn't think that was going to happen. I had gone to the dentist, gotten some medicine, and then gone on vacation. I was in Myrtle Beach. Well, I had gotten a text at 3:00 p.m. that said, I have a final answer. It's not going to work for you guys to be at our facility. And I was working with my support rep, Amy, and her and I were talking through the situation and what we were going to do. I was sitting under an umbrella on the beach, and I was talking to Amy. We were on the phone. We were talking on the phone. And I was like, Amy, I don't know what we're going to do if we can't go back to this church. We're going to have to start over, find a new facility. And as we're talking on the phone, sitting on the beach, she was in Richmond. She had her laptop open, and she said, Jamie, I have just gotten an email. And she read me the email over the phone. And she says, basically the pastor in this email, his name is Jeff. He used to be a part of a CC community. He's a local pastor. He's been here for 2 years. He's reaching out to us as a CC group to say, how can I help you? How can we as a church come alongside you as a CC community and help you? We both kind of sat there in just utter disbelief that while we were talking about the situation, she gets an email from a pastor. So I immediately said, well, can you reply to him and ask him if we can meet at his facility? And she was like, absolutely. He responds and says, I'm fully on board with letting CC use our building. God had gone before us and provided this facility within hours of me getting this text saying that we weren't going to be able to meet. So I say all that to say that, there's CC groups that meet all over the country, all over the world, that struggle to get into different facilities. I don't know that a pastor has ever gone and seeked out a community and said, "We're here. Can I help? Can we be a help to you?" So that was just amazing that he was able to go before us and to find us a facility without me really even having to look. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to come back to a couple of the details there to make sure that I've got them right in my head, because it certainly sounds quite amazing. So you are super stressed out because it seems
Yeah.
like the writing is on the wall that you're probably not going to be able to have the community back into the facility come the fall of 2020.
Right.
And that's kind of led to some TMJ and lots of stress manifesting itself. And you're on vacation. You're talking with Amy, who is the area director or something along those lines.
Yes.
And shortly after getting communication from the person who led things at the facility that you were at, she gives you confirmation, hey, you guys have to be out. You can't come back, essentially, in the fall.
Right.
And within hours after that, it sounds like roughly an hour or so, Amy gets this email saying, how can we help? And then not long after that, it's confirmed you can use our facility. Am I tracking all that right?
Yes, exactly. So I kind of knew the writing was on the wall, like you talked about. We knew that was coming. So at 3:00, I had gotten the text from the church secretary that we weren't going to be able to meet. And then an hour and a half later, I get a message from him saying he thinks we'll be able to meet at his church. He just has to get, the final approval from them. And then we ended up meeting there. That ended up being our haven during that year. And he actually ended up being a very integral part of our community. He ended up helping out with one of the classes. And it was just a beautiful partnership. So it was really cool.
Wow. Tell us a little bit more about haven. You used that word.
Well, as a group of homeschoolers, I feel like sometimes we're all out on our own. We're all in our little homes, homeschooling our children. And we need a place to come to be together. We needed that sense of community and to be able to have a place that we could gather together and fellowship together, minister to one another. And it's amazing to remember and to think that, God cares about this little tiny CC community that meets in Mechanicsville, Virginia, this tiny little thing, that a God that's so big and powerful could care so much about something that seems so small. But since this movement of God in our community, I remember standing at Knox and saying, God, that was the name of the church, Knox. God is doing something awesome in this community. He wants us to meet, and he wants to provide a place for us to meet, because things just don't drop out of the air like this. Facilities don't just drop out of the air like this. God wants us to meet, and he's doing something powerful here. And I've seen that purpose that he did. Now, we have since outgrown that facility, and we have moved to another wonderful facility that the Lord provided for us. And we've seen so many families coming in. The refuge and haven that I'm talking about too is during a time of so much turmoil. COVID was very stressful for a lot of people that were trying to figure out what they were going to do with their kids. We had a lot of families coming in during that time because they were at home trying to homeschool their kids anyway because the schools were shut down. So we ended up getting a lot of families. And this was such a wonderful, sweet little opportunity for us to have a place to meet and to go to be together.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so neat. I want to explore a little more, Jamie, what you were just describing in terms of God, you sense that was sort of doing something, or that something was going to happen. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. So, being a group of homeschoolers, we have all different types of walks of life and different people that come and go from our community. But, you know, we have a unique opportunity. Even as the director, I have a unique opportunity to be able to minister to families as they come through. Sometimes we might have families that are military families that are only there for a year, that we get to know and to pour into and to build relationship with, and then they might be gone again, and we might not see that family. And I often think about the families that have come and gone from our community and moved away, or were military families, that we're all going to be together again in heaven, and that we had this little time together on earth, but that we're all going to be together again, and when we all get to heaven. But this community has just been such a place of refuge for us as homeschoolers to come together. Um, and really, for me, this is my ministry. This is my place that I pour my heart into, that the Lord has used me. I believe He's used me as a vessel to be able to minister to these different families. We've had families go through divorce. We've had families, lose parents, and together as a community, we've been able to walk through that together. And sometimes, it looks a little different than it would at church. Sometimes we get very polished up and we go to church and we put on, a face, and we go and we check all the boxes. But when we come together in this little homeschool community, it's really a chance to take down some of those um, walls that we put up, and to be vulnerable with one another, because we're all walking this path together. We're all walking and journeying down this homeschool path together. And this is an opportunity for us to just be together.
Yeah. Wonderful. Seriously, thanks for adding all of that additional color. I appreciate that. Did you have any prior relationship with, I think his name is Jeff, the pastor that you're referencing?
No relationship at all. He basically just said, my name is Jeff. I'm the pastor of a local Knox Presbyterian Church in Mechanicsville. My family and I have been in the area for 2 years. We were part of CC in the past. Currently, his kids were currently in a private school in the area. But I'm not sure if CC would allow me to be involved in any way at this point. But if there is, I sure would love to help. He just wanted to help. He thought maybe he could help tutor a class, or, he didn't even know how he could help. He just wanted to be able to help. And I don't know that there's any other emails like this in the world that has to do with, just reaching out as a pastor, laying it on his heart to reach out to us and offer his help. So, and on the exact time frame that we're searching for a facility, it was amazing. And I was, texting with him and Amy this morning, both of them just going through the memories and remembering. And Amy just said, I remember that conversation very clearly. We were sitting, you were on vacation, and we were on the phone, and the email just popped up on my computer. It's just funny how God does. So definitely, my opinion, it was God, but
So I want to explore this a little bit more too, though, because you mentioned Jeff had his kids in a school, and it sounds like, but check me on this, it sounds like Jeff's kids did not end up being involved in the CC community, meaning he didn't have a horse in the race.
No, he didn't. He just loved CC and loved homeschooling. I don't think that for their family, they had moved towards a private Christian school when he came to the area. But he had seen what CC had to offer, and he knew that it was an amazing program, and he just wanted to see how he could help. So that's the part of it that's so funny, is that not only did he open his church and came in, but at the time I really needed a tutor. So I needed, I have different classrooms, and each one of those has a tutor that's in charge that introduces the curriculum and works with the class. And I needed a tutor. And he stepped into that position for the first half of the year until one of our other moms was like, I think I can do that. So then, he was just there filling in until we could find someone. But you're right. He didn't have any kids in the program. His kids had moved on and were in a different school. So it's just very cool.
Yeah. No prior relationship,
No,
no horse in
no,
the race. And he
no,
reaches out.
no.
So good. So
Down.
good.
I know. Like manna from heaven. It just dropped down, to provide. Yeah.
Well, we asked Jamie these final two questions of all of our guests. And given what you just said, I have a pretty good idea of how you'll respond to the first one. But we ask it nonetheless. And that first one is, was it coincidence or God?
And to me, it definitely was God. The fact that I just think it's almost comical, the fact that the email came through while I was on the phone with Amy. And she reminded me of that this morning as I was texting and going through the memories of it. She was like, we were on the phone when I got that email, Jamie. We were talking about what we were going to do. It's just, sometimes I just think God also has a sense of humor. That's funny to me that, we're talking about it and this email pops up that of this pastor, this local church that's willing to help us out. But so definitely God. And then seeing the fruit of what he's done in our community, how he's grown our community, um, definitely the reason why he laid that out for us was because he had a plan and he had a future and a purpose for our community. So I love that he did that for us.
Well, final question for you. Tell us how your life has been impacted or how your life has perhaps changed as a result of you seeing this as a God in action type of moment.
Yeah, so I think for me, it has really grown me in my faith of just trusting him and trusting that he will provide. And I think we as homeschoolers, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that everything kind of is leaning on us of making sure all of these things fall into place and our kids graduate and know how to read and know how to write and do all these things. And so it's a constant battle of just your own faith in yourself. You have to kind of give that up and put it in the Lord's hands. But so this moment, I think for me, really showed me that God had something in store for our community. There was a reason and a purpose for him wanting for us to continue to meet. And I remember standing in front of the community and saying, God is doing something in our community. I'm so glad that you're here and that you're a part of it. And I don't know what's coming, but I know it's going to be rich and good because God is in this. He is in this community, and He wants us to meet, and He has got His hand on this community. So I think seeing that, and then just my growth and my faith over the years since this has happened has really deepened. Just because I've seen God come through, and like I said, my life's not perfect. My kids aren't perfect, but seeing that God has been able to use this, to use me in this community, um, to minister to families, to come alongside them and help them in their struggles and in their homeschooling journey has been such a blessing. And my husband and I were talking this morning at breakfast, and he said, it's funny how God has created each one of us so different. His ministry of what my husband does looks very different from mine. His ministry looks like, going out and to VCU and doing street preaching and sharing the gospel. And my ministry looks like ministering to young families and new homeschooling moms. And it just looks completely different. But he said, but both of those things show God's character and show who He is. So all of us have a different part that we're playing, but all of it leads to His glory and shows who He is. But it just is different parts of what it looks like. So that was really cool. But I just love being a part of what God's doing. I feel like that He's using me. He's guiding my words and my steps as I pour into these families and try to help. And sometimes by showing my own vulnerability and my own mistakes that I've made. But I have sat, across from many a mom that, you know, has poured their heart out and shared,
Mm.
and I have just felt like the Lord, like, God, I'm so thankful that you have me in this place and that I get to have this conversation, that I get to pray with this mom. I just had a few weeks ago, we had a new family join, and there was one spot left in my community of the younger elementary kids. And I was kind of leaving that spot. I really didn't know why. But I had a couple families and I just didn't feel like it was the right fit. And then this mom comes in. She's got these older kids that needed to be in our challenge program, and then she had one kid that needed to be in the younger program. And so she sat across from me, and as we were going through her application and her interview, and I just said, "This is so cool that you're here," because there was this one spot left that I just did not feel like I was supposed to give up yet. And now that you're here, I know that that spot was for you, that God was saving that spot for you. And she just started bawling, crying. And I was like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry." And she's like, "No, no, no." She was like, "God is so good. He's so good because he knew that we needed this community." So that's kind of like, I feel like our story started with this God doing this amazing thing for us and giving us this facility. And then, all the way up until just a couple weeks ago, just miracle and story after story of families coming in. But, and every time I'm just like amazed. I'm like, God, you're in this, you're guiding our steps. And just such a blessing to be a part of it, what he's doing.
Yeah. Go God. Go God.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
Jamie, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for walking us through all those neat details. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing the story. I am very confident that others will be blessed by this. So thank you.
I hope so.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me. This was awesome to be able to share. I knew when this happened that I was like, I'm going to get to tell this story one day. We're going to continue to tell the story of what God did. So, it's just amazing that we have this opportunity to be able to share what God is doing in this little town in Mechanicsville.
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
Praise God. Well, again, been a pleasure. Thanks a bunch for having you on, for coming on. Truly.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, there you have it. Was it coincidence or God? You decide for yourself, but I believe you just heard a story for His glory. When You Look is powered by the stories that guests share. So if you have a story to tell, let us know by going to whenyoulook.com and click on Be a Guest, or click on the link in the description below. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, tell us what you think in the comments, and share it with somebody that will be impacted by the story. Thanks and God bless.